Well, NASA's Orion capsule has reached the moon, the first visit in 50 years.
Wrong information in the first sentence.
Joining us live now is Fred Watson, Australia's astronomer at large.
Rather than chief astronomer, they've called him astronomer at large, but in getting creative, they've been a bit inaccurate. At large is an elected political representative under certain circumstances, not an appointment.
How did this flyby of the moon go? Was it all smooth?
Duper's delight laugh in preparation for some bullshit.
To use space industry jargon, everything was nominal.
Yeah, everything is nominal. We're not giving you one number, one figure, any statistic that you can go back and check and find out it was BS.
Which means it was really, really good.
Did anyone tell him he was on a news station and not play school?
Nominal is the standard expression for things that are expected to take place and did.
Could you imagine in a corporate board meeting someone saying, okay, what are the results of that project? The answer is nominal. Well, what does that mean? It means it's really, really good.
And yes, that beautiful picture of our planet taken from the distance of the moon.
Safety first, no detail, including where it was taken from, which was apparently the distance of the moon. Now try and prove something out of this, Bart Sabrell.
There were a couple more that I saw, Ash, that had the moon in the foreground, the Earth in the background.
You're not showing those photos, because someone will go, well, if the moon's this size and the Earth's this size and the camera's here, hang on a minute. In this photo of supposed Earth, I mean, it's such lackluster effort. If they're going to put up fakery, at least in the past, they put some effort in. If there's one thing I demand of my fakery, it's a quality.
It sort of gives you goosebumps to think of this little spacecraft looking back.
And you still try to talk it up. If the astronomer at large has got goosebumps, shouldn't we all have goosebumps?
You may have noticed, if you saw those, that the back side of the moon, the side that we don't see from Earth, is quite different from the near side. That's just because the geology on the back side of the moon is quite different from the near side.
Interestingly, he mentions that the back side of the moon is different to the front side of the moon. It's obviously on a sphere, that's an impossibility, but he does clarify that the back side is the side that can't be viewed with telephoto lens and high-resolution telescopes. And that is totally different to what you can see, that you can't check. Where's this going?
Official at NASA said that humans could be living on the moon during this decade.
And the expectation is that Artemis 3, which is the first one of this series of spacecraft that will touch down on the moon's surface, that will land in 2025 probably.
We'll land. Big declaration. Probably.
And so you've got another 5 years by the end of the decade to have the process of taking astronauts to and from the moon.
Setting up the process, I mean, you've got to do that first, but will they?
And I can imagine that by the end of the decade, there will be some sort of permanent base on the moon.
Obviously, the base we're going to be showing won't be on the moon. Where could it be?
Perhaps akin to the kind of thing that we see in Antarctica, where we have permanent scientific bases there.
Well, that answers that. Thank you very much.
Only, of course, in a much more extreme environment.
Which was he talking about there? It was a bit vague. The Antarctica or the moon, which is harsher? Well, here's the temperature in Antarctica, -10 to -60, so the bases are somewhere in that. Information reported on space.com from that 2009 NASA probe. According to this information, it's 120 degrees Celsius in the sun. That's above boiling point. And at night, it's -130. Getting down to -253 at the poles. Somewhat harsher than Antarctica, so it just makes a lot more sense to put a moon base here rather than on the moon. But they say it's going to be on the moon. How do they explain these temperatures? Now, you're not going to believe this. That probe where they previously reported inhospitable temperatures and environment. Look at this. This is just incredible. This was 6 months ago, 2022. NASA-funded scientists. NASA-funded scientists, not NASA scientists. I mean, their contracts are obviously confidential. You're not going to find out who they are. But I'm pretty sure they're all above board. Anyway, they discovered shaded locations within the pits on the moon that always hover around a comfortable, get this, 17 degrees C. Oh, well, hey, God, is this on the other side of the moon that we can't see? And if you're a European that's going to freeze to death because of green energy policies, I mean, 17 degrees. Give me a ticket.
I mean, how dangerous is this still? There's obviously a reason why it's taken decades and decades for us to actually send humans back to the moon.
Well, once you get to these pits and caves, the temperature's no longer a danger. If it ever was, because this is obviously in sunlight on the moon and it's 127 degrees Celsius.
Man, I'll tell you, Andy's never seen a driver like this.
It's not like these guys are going, Jesus, it's hot up here. They're just talking like they're in 17 degrees Celsius.
Okay, when he hits the craters and starts bouncing is when he gets his rooster tail. He makes sharp turns.
No danger at all. They didn't know that it was going to be 127 degrees, or did they? So I reckon they only found out. Those tyres. When did they inflate them? Did they inflate them here on Earth or up there when it was 120? Because if they inflated them down here, they took it up there. And the buggy gives you goosebumps, not this photo. This is where they got the photo from, by the way. So NASA's update after Orion's first close flyby of the moon. Now, this goes for over an hour. You'd think there'd be lots of footage. There's not. Look at the bottom. 57,000 views, 0 comments. Now, comments aren't blocked. It's just that after 57,000 views, 0 comments is what gets displayed when you block the ones that we'd make.
But the challenge is, once you've established that you can survive in space, and that means the weightlessness and the radiation environment.
Yeah, so they had that technology, and as a few of the commenters on my previous video pointed out.
We don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology.
Taking all the hardware you need to support a community to the lunar surface is not a cheap option. But I think the engineering is well on its way to being achieved, that it will be a possibility.
So towards the end of this news segment on Sky News, you seem to think it was Play School, everything's still just a possibility. Costs a lot of money, isn't it?
Certainly not cheap. Do you think that's value for taxpayer money? Are we getting our worth out of this?
Oh, that's pretty much it. There's an astronomer at large, which he mentions it costs a lot of money. Taxpayer money. Yeah, obviously budgeting and fiscal responsibility are not high on this guy's mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a job.
You know, to spend 4 times that amount on a lunar mission, which will pave the way to some really, really exciting adventures for humankind.
Well, he's partially right there. So this money will go to adventures for some of humankind, namely himself, politicians, corporations, banksters. But the adventures will be to, say, the Monaco Grand Prix, to skiing at Aspen, maybe sunning it up in the Greek Isles. See, with rising interest rates, him and his family will be going. Not for the likes of her, who can't pay her power bills. But she doesn't sit there empty-handed. She gets something.
What you measure when you're looking at the amount of money that's spent on spaceflight is the inspiration that comes from that back to our planet, back to our species.
I mean, look, she can't pay her bills, maybe not pay her mortgage. She might be homeless soon, but she's got inspiration for our entire species. What more does she want? Australia's astronomer at large can hardly contain his joy when he says what she's getting, inspiration. It almost sounds like he's laughing at her, but I'm sure that's not the case.
Inspiration that comes from.
I can't get enough of these moon buggies, but whatever happened to them? Like Don Pettit said, they lost that technology. Or did they bring them back to Earth? Or did they have the rocket power and fuel that they took with them to bring these? Obviously, they weigh quite a bit. To bring them back, or did they leave them up there? In which case, they're not lost. They just go back up there and they'll be there, won't they? In fact, once they're up there, won't they just be able to charge them up? They won't need to take new buggies. All right, I mean, you could talk forever on their bullshit, couldn't you? I only made this video because that Sky News article came up the day after I'd just done a first moon video I'd done for ages. So anyway, all right, that's it for this one.